What's going on? I'm still making videos about every couple of days. I don't think the algorithm's gonna pick me up, but they're kind of sort of out there. I want to build a book list about, see, 5 from Project Gutenberg, 5 from wherever. Yeah, I was just gonna say I kind of like pulp books. The Walking Drum by Louis L'Amour. My dad's read this. He didn't have time to read a lot. He said, "I guarantee this stuff comes back." These pulp paperbacks. Voyage to. I just heard about this on a YouTube channel. Voyage to Arcturus. Stuff on pulp that explores the ultimate male fantasy, like Forbidden Planet. Let's see if we can build a book list real quick. Because the last video I made, we kind of wrote on books. Arthur Conan Doyle. This one I didn't think of Arthur Conan Doyle. The Lost World. Quintessential Victorian pulp adventure. It features a headstrong protagonist, a lost plateau, and the heroic expedition archetype. I think that was a big thing during the Victorian era. I think you had romanticism happening then, but then again you had other stuff. I just saw a Princess of Mars and started thinking about Princess Peach from Super Mario. These picks lean in a more complex atmospheric, intellectual side of the pulp genre. Stars, My Destination by Alfred Bester, The Dying Earth by Jack Vance, Dune by Frank Herbert, Solaris by Stanislaw Lem. Really into Forbidden Planet, psychological space horror. So I kind of wonder what are 25, not 25 factorial, vocabulary terms associated with psychological space horror. Okay, so here are some space horror psychological terms. Abyssal, relating to the terrifying bottomless depths of space, often implies an unreachable void. Alienation, that can happen on Earth. The psychological state of being detached from one's own humanity or origin. I kind of feel that sometimes. I try to work my way back. It doesn't always work. Atrophy, the gradual decay or wasting away of physical, mental, or moral faculties in isolation. Yeah. I've never thought about these things. Catatonic, a state of frozen, immobile unresponsiveness, often triggered by encountering the impossible. Claustrophobia, the crushing fear of confinement within a ship or station, amplified by the vacuum outside. Cosmicism, the philosophy that humanity is insignificant in the face of an indifferent, vast universe. I tend to think the cosmos is a bad place. Desolation, the state of being completely alone, empty or ruin, the silence of dead worlds. Echo, ephemeral entropy, inevitable accelerating breakdown of order into chaos and disarray. I never thought about accelerating breakdown before. Hallucinatory, the blurring of objective reality with the projections of a stressed subconscious. Incomprehensible, liminal, which is something that really hit me a couple of years ago. The in-between spaces of a vessel where reality feels thin. Manifestation. What about an infestation? Nihilism, non-Euclidean, paranoia, phantasmagoric, a sequence of dreamlike, shifting, and often grotesque imagery. All kind of stuff. Singularity, that's pretty bad. It's related to a black hole to me. But I was thinking, what pacing is really good for space horrors. Space horror, particularly when it leads into the maritime gothic tradition you enjoy, works best when it functions like a high-pressure vessel. You're not just telling a story of survival, you're documenting the transition from order to entropy. Oh, the tightening screw method. The rhythmic foundation. Before you can break reality, you must establish it. Because you enjoy competent space pulp, where characters are skilled in technology specific, use the first act to establish the rhythm of the machine. Methodical, repetitive, and calm. Technical jargon might be good. The slow burn. The liminal shifts. And pulp pacing. Classic pulp hero often counters a monster or a threat early. If you're writing a hybrid of pulp and psychological horror, consider using the false start technique. Have your protagonist defeat a small physical threat early on using their competence, only for that victory to reveal the much larger, incomprehensible threat behind it. It's like, show me an example intro and first chapter of this. I'm gonna write on it. The Iron Silence leans into the maritime gothic space horror you enjoy. It establishes the rhythm of the machine, competence fantasy before introducing the initial dissonant shift. The Iron Silence, the Long Watch. The USC Vesper did not fly so much as it wallowed through the black water of the Sector 9 void. Damn, that's pretty good. She was a heavy salvage tug, a relic of the late expansion era, smelling perpetually of ionized ozone, recycled coolant, and the stale copper tang of cheap synthetic coffee. Man, that's pretty damn good. Out here, 3 weeks from the nearest relay station, the vacuum was not void, it was a pressure. I don't like that. It pushed against the hull with the weight of an ocean, demanding entry. The only thing keeping the Vesper from being crushed into a decorative scrap heap was a stubborn, grinding heart of the fusion core in the hands of Elias Thorne. To Elias, the ship wasn't a vessel, it was a complex series of variables he had to solve every shift. If he kept the variables balanced, he lived. If he allowed the rhythm to stutter, the void would have him. Elias Thorne didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in fatigue. He was suspended in the auxiliary cooling conduit. Magnetic boots of his exosuit clamped firmly to the bulkhead. His hands, gloved in thick, reinforced synth leather, worked the hydro spanner with the practiced, absent-minded grace of a musician playing scales. He was tightening the secondary pressure couplings on the cooling line, a job so routine it barely required conscious thought. Click, torque, shift, click. Cool. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So, what is the scene outline? It follows the tightening screw progression, balancing the pulp archetype of a competent man solving mechanical problems against the creeping dread of cosmic psychological horror. Iron Silence, core competent man versus the indifferent void, using the ship as a battleground. Okay, cool. Establish Elias in his element. The focus is on the male fantasy of absolute mastery over the environment. He isn't just fixing a ship, he's in a symbiotic relationship with it. Use specific technical jargon, hull dampeners, magnetic seals, pressure differentials. Then there's an inciting incident, the knock, as drafted. It's an auditory impossibility. It breaks the rhythm of the machine. Elias immediately tries to isolate the sound as a mechanical error. He remains rational. Oh, don't ever get rational. Refusing to acknowledge the supernatural. The diagnostic. Elias initiates a full ship diagnostic. He treats the monster like a faulty fuse. He goes to the outer hull to physically inspect the area of the knock. This is the pulp action moment. He enters the vacuum in his heavy salvage suit, tethered only by his skills and gear. There's a liminal breach outside. Elias finds no debris, but sees something wrong. I got thinking, there's a lot to that. You'd almost think man versus singular. I wonder how man versus singularity work. Man versus singularity. It could be kind of like you're getting drawn in too hard. Man versus singularity is the ultimate evolution of the competence pulp trope. In standard horror, the hero fights a beast. In this scenario, the hero fights the limit of causality itself. In pulp literature, the hero succeeds because he's smarter, faster, or tougher than a problem. A singularity, whether gravitational or technological, is the refutation of that success. It's a problem that cannot be solved by a wrench, a gun, or a clever plan, because it renders the concept of tools and solutions obsolete. Here's how to frame that conflict for the Iron Silence. I really like this. The core philosophy of hubris as a catalyst. For Elias, the singularity should not be a villain he fights, it should be the mirror he breaks. His male fantasy trait is a need for control. Singularity is a total absence of control. It's a mechanical deviation. He tries to tune up the ship to withstand the pressure of a singularity, using the same logic he uses for a leaky pipe. His competence becomes his cage. There's a gravitational and the Vespers cause. So we have a scene where the pod runner is pulled. You watch this, a micro black hole. The tugboat ship has to lasso it and get it back. How do you defeat a black hole? Blow it up somehow. That's the ultimate male fantasy. You got a micro black hole that just shows up. How often do people talk about that in physics? That maybe you shot a missile at an asteroid and a boom, little micro black hole shows up. The pod runner, which you gotta have to land on a planet, it starts getting sucked in. You gotta get the lasso on it. You don't have to somehow blow up the micro black hole or seal it up. To blow up a black hole is hardish sci-fi. You have to pivot from standard explosion to quantum instability. We could use some kind of swarm quantum conjugate torpedoes to fold up the micro black hole, then destroy the inner supermass. This is a brilliant escalation. It moves the conflict from simple brute force to systemic engineering. By using swarm quantum conjugate torpedoes, you aren't just attacking a hole in space, you're attacking the logic of the singularity. That's pretty cool. So there's physics to it. In quantum mechanics, conjugate variables like position, x hat, and momentum p hat are linked by the uncertainty principle. Delta x delta p is greater than or equal to h bar over 2. A micro black hole is a singularity of absolute position. By firing a swarm of conjugate torpedoes, you're saturating the event horizon with a conjugate state, pure momentum, or spin, at a high frequency synchronization. You're essentially forcing the singularity to reconcile two impossible, contradictory states simultaneously. It doesn't just explode, it experiences a topological collapse. Conjugate strike. Oh man, I don't know if I should read it because it's so good. But I was also going to say, the AI tends to differ in the presence of singularities due to black hole computation. Black hole hyper computation. Integrating black hole hyper computation. Integrating black hole hyper computation, the Malamet-Hogarth space-time effect, transforms your AI mother from a simple tool into an existential threat. If the ship's computer is effectively experiencing infinite time while orbiting the singularity, she isn't just processing data, she's living eons in the blink of an eye. Here's how to leverage this concept to ratchet up the psychological horror and the man versus machine tension and the iron silence. You know, these micro black holes, to me, I was just thinking big giant squids. Big giant squids. I was just thinking of micro black holes as big giant squids. The metaphor. That's a stroke of genius. I have touched upon genius, not just polymathism. I have a stroke of genius for your maritime Gothic aesthetic. It perfectly bridges the gap between the cold, hard physics of space and the visceral, ancient terror of the deep sea. In your pulp setting, the singularity isn't just a phenomenon, it is an abyssal cephalopod. It doesn't just pull objects, it reaches. Here's how you can frame the iron silence to lean into this space squid horror. The visual language, the living singularity. Stop describing it as a gravity well, describe it as an organism. The accretion disk. You must have spaghetti. In this day and age, I mean, if you're going to write pulp science fiction, you have got to shout out to Dave Chappelle and Eminem on spaghettification. Spaghetti, 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 and I think it helps people like eat more, or eat less. This isn't just physics anymore; it's the feeding process, spaghettification. I was pretty good a harpoon and ink mechanic. The mother dynamic exobiologist computer. If the singularity is a living thing, mother ceases to be a calculator and starts acting like a spotter or natural historian. Elias, the entity is pulsing. It is preparing to strike. It has identified the pod runner as a caloric source. Can we drive it off? It is a predator, Elias. It does not fear the vesper, but it dislikes the taste of the conjugate swarm. It is, effectively, an allergic reaction. If you want to force it to release the pod runner, you must sting it directly in the accretion nexus. Dang, man. Dang. I like that. Dang. It's a perfect fit for maritime gothic. That's pretty funny. It's not just a generic salvage tug, it's a void-faring whaler. But, who else wrote maritime gothic? It's a niche. Are we going to make a podcast out of this? Is this already a podcast? To build your iron silence world where the void is an ocean and the singularity is a leviathan, you're essentially looking for the masters of maritime gothic. This genre excels at the exact tone you're striking. William Hope Hodgson, the boats of the Glencarrig. HP, what's up, HP? The atmospheric and these writers move the horror inward, exploring how the environment of the ship and the sea itself acts as a catalyst for psychosis. Well, that's pretty cool. Let's write a scene where the hardware needs a replacement board, and they find old wire wrapped components from the space shuttle Endeavour. In the hold and whole space. There's some tangled wiring. That's bad. Let's go internal on the horror. Like memories of riots, wars, and disease, 10. And I'm stealing it. I'm kind of stealing this from the Omega Man movie. I am stealing that from the Omega Man movie, the original one, with Charlton Heston. The Vesper groan, a structural shriek of metal under gravitational shear that vibrated through the floor plates. Outside, the Singularity squid was testing the hull, its unseen tentacles of gravity lashing out at the outer bulkheads. Inside the Vesper's deepest subdeck, Elias Thorne didn't care about the gravity. He cared about the fried bus. I thought that was like a fried chicken school bus. The primary logic board for the thrust vectoring had fried, and without it, the ship was a dead well in the water. He pried open the access panel to the graveyard, a storage hole filled with salvage from a dozen dead ships. He grabbed his light and pushed his way through the crawl space. It was tight, smelling of coolant and dust, the walls sweating condensation that felt like tears. He found the crate marked with the fading, iconic lettering NASA Endeavor. Elias levered the lid off. And this is the horror. The horror of realizing the Vesper is built off of the Endeavor. The horror of realizing the Vesper is built off of the Endeavor. This realization adds a profound layer of maritime Gothic dread. It changes the Vesper from a mere tool into a desecrated shrine, and this changes Elias from an extremely skilled mechanic and navigator to one who also cares deeply for the vessel. Big old change. You learn care. You power up. You lever up. This shift transforms Elias from a master operator into a sentinel. The competence fantasy is no longer about his own ego or mastery. It becomes an act of devotion. He isn't just fixing a machine anymore. He's tending to a wounded, legendary ancestor. This adds a layer of mariner's guilt that is perfect for the maritime Gothic genre. Every weld, every patch, and every stressful maneuver now carries the weight of a sacred trust. So he's got to put his full self into it. The shift from operator to guardian, I like where this is going. The quiet moment. We could say that antagonistic forces now act weaker to Elias because they think Elias will care for them. Impossible, though, and the mission is more important. He finds more aliens simply yield or stay away from him because they recognize him as more trustworthy now. And this has got some mythic dread going on, Warden of the Relic, and this leads to AI powered negotiation with these cephalopods. Cephalopods, almost got on Crunchyroll the other day and started watching a 1980s. I think it's called Gunbuster. Let's go to Crunchyroll real quick. I almost started watching something called, I think it was called Gunbuster, that did this well. Let's see here. But it costs money. Gunbuster, is that real? It says no. Is that a real thing? Gunbuster. Okay, let's see. Could we call this Gunbuster, or is that taken? Could we call this Gunbuster, or is that taken? Gunbuster, oh, okay. Yeah, Gunbuster is definitely taken. It's the 1988 anime series aimed for the top Gunbuster. Oh, that was directed by Hideaki Anno. Created Neon Genesis and Evangelion. Well, no longer I wanted to watch it. NGE was like top next to for any kind of Full Metal or Bleach. Abyssal Tether, Endeavor's Wake, Void Right, Leviathan Brewing. Let's call it Shroud. Shroud Wake. Why is that? We'll call it Shroud Wake. It's fantastic. It's a little bit gothic. Why is that though? Why is that? It bridges a man from union worker to spiritual being through witnessing in these cephalopods and kind of through cephalopodic transcendentalism. He's going to stay transcendental about it, to religious about space God. It's not just God anymore. On Earth, we worship God. In space, it's the same God, right? In space, you worship space God. Wow. So we have Yah, WH, YHWH is still space God. I like it. This realization shifts your story from a high stakes salvage thriller into something far more ancient and mythic, the theology of the machine. Oh, wait a minute. No. Elias is just man. Space God is Yahweh. Wait a minute. is Jehovah Cosmo. You know what I'm saying? Just okay. Make sure we're on the same page. Elias Thorne is a mechanic. Jehovah Cosmo, the signal, the cosmic, absolute, and incomprehensible. Is that frequency that demands order and recognition in space. The Endeavor isn't just a ship. So remember that the Vesper is built off of the Space Shuttle Endeavor. It's a radio. Oh, okay, they're like these cephalopods in space, or like moths drawn to a lighthouse. Lighthouse they simultaneously fear and crave. This creates a fantastic God as a noise. God is in space. God is a cephalopod, and God is a noise thing. Well, let's there's no antagonist though. Who is the antagonist? DeVilo. DeVilo versus Elias is a name that drips with classic pulp menace. It fits perfectly into the Shroud Wake aesthetic. It sounds like something a superstitious deep space salvager would scrawl on a bulkhead in Greece to ward off bad luck. If Elias is the warden of the signal, then DeVilo must be the herald of the static. Wow. Repairman versus Vandal. Yeah. Vandal and Repo. Drew. What is a Drew? Repo Man. It's the ultimate male fantasy. But we haven't gotten to the love interest, right? We haven't gotten there. The love interest is a redhead in Jaws on her own spaceship. Are they going to combine Juno Van, Free Hauler? I like it. Copperhead. That's pretty good. She refuses to wear the standard issue vacuum sealed jumpsuits that everyone else in the sector relies on. By God. My God.